earthquakes, war, pestilence, and famine. These are the signs of the end times.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
In previous episodes, we've looked at some of the signs and symbols on the UK polymer £20 note and what they represent, and successfully dispelled myths that suggest a 5G tower and coronavirus symbol are represented on the note. Also, we uncovered some peculiar relationships with Joseph Mallord William Turner, the painter on the back of the £20 note, who is also responsible for the painting of Tintern Abbey windows and the HMS Fighting Temeraire on the £20 note. Will Turner is also a character in popular Hollywood movie Pirates of the Caribbean, starring Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom.
Probably one of the few who knew him as William Turner. Good man, good pirate. I swear you look just like him.
My father was not a pirate.
An intriguing connection to say the least, and if anything, a celebration of maritime law by the Bank of England and Her Majesty the Queen of England. The investigation is now going to look deeper into the rabbit hole. The Queen of England, the Bank of England, and money itself are some of the main power influences that form British society. But how? This part of the investigation will be looking further into the powers and influences of authority that govern nationally
Again, I'm not
and
as
internationally.
deep an expert on that as I am on vaccines.
Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them.
We want to thank you for turning folks in and making sure we are all safe.
For the world at large, normalcy only returns when we largely vaccinated the entire global population. The entire global population.
And just what are their concerns, interests, or agendas? A key event that we should all be aware of by now is Event 201. The Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, hosted Event 201, a high-level pandemic exercise on October the 18th, 2019 in New York. If you still think that this is all just a myth and make-believe, a quick Google search and you can find more about this on a website. Yes, there's actually a website. Visit the centerforhealthsecurity.org after this video. The exercise illustrated areas where public or private partnerships will be necessary during the response to a severe pandemic in order to diminish large-scale economic and societal consequences. That pandemic being the coronavirus, and the consequences of its problem around the world.
Police officers will be briefed on how to go about enforcing lockdown measures to make sure they don't abuse their powers. It comes after a former Supreme Court judge criticised Derbyshire police for shaming dog walkers.
Yeah, the force deployed drones to monitor areas of the Peak District and then posted that footage on Twitter to highlight what they said were non-essential activities. Are police forces going too far to enforce lockdown?
Many have participated and contributed towards commentary regarding solutions at these times. But there are those who are also bold enough to ask peculiar and intriguing questions as to the origins of this virus.
It is, of course, a provocation. Few people in China would dare to walk around with a hoodie openly demanding freedom of speech. Yet, since the outbreak of the coronavirus, Wu Jia is far from alone. in taking issue with China's censorship.
I think in the whole world you won't find a better example, an example that's happening here and now and concerns so many people. If the Communist Party and state media had not tried to cover up the outbreak, we would not be suffering like this.
Who has signed an open letter by some 700 citizens demanding freedom of speech. The letter was drafted after the death of Li Wenliang, a doctor who warned other healthcare professionals in chat groups about the disease and was silenced by the police. Later he died of the virus. His death triggered an outcry on social media and led to demands for an end to censorship. The police made him sign a pledge not to talk about the disease again. A copy is circulating on the internet.
Mainstream media and social media narratives can drastically affect human perspective and decision making.
I hope that tonight will show NHS workers how much we appreciate their hard work. They still go out there, not afraid, and they just doing the best they can. And we're so thankful for that.
Well, we've also heard from another doctor just a few moments ago to get a sense of what it's like for them coping with multiple coronavirus patients and all too often seeing them die. I was able to speak to one just in the past hour after she finished her shift at a different London hospital. Dr. Katie Sanderson wrote an email to let people know what was happening. I began by asking her to tell me how her shift had gone today.
It's really, really horrible. It's horrible for us, but it's obviously more horrible for the patients and for their families.
Yeah, they're the backbone of our society.
There are scenes of just unimaginable sadness, and I speak for myself and my colleagues in other London hospitals.
But I also want to offer a special thank you to everyone who has now volunteered to help the NHS.
Patients are dying who have staff members who are relatives who go straight back to work. It's really, really, really terrible.
When we launched the appeal last night, we hoped to get 250,000 volunteers over a few days. But I can tell you that in just 24 hours, 405,000 people have responded to the call.
And I hope that with the videos that people hopefully are taking tonight and posting on social media, that they can at any moment of the day when they need a little cheer, that they can just go online and they can feel the appreciation, as I already mentioned, but also get a bit of some energy, just to get just that boost, because they're working like the longest days ever, so that they just get that boost to keep on going and knowing that we are as a nation behind them.
And I'm talking because I know that we could have been more prepared in London, and I feel people could be more prepared elsewhere in the country.
All the enormous challenges that you're facing at the moment.
And the reason we called it Event 201 is we knew eventually one of those days, one of those events would be the big one. And that big one would really challenge our capacity to respond. And to respond to the big one, we do need to have all hands on deck.
Just tell us what has been the most testing thing today for you, Katie.
The challenge for me is to, when multiple people are dying in a day.
Event 201 was the pandemic simulation exercise predicted to kill 65 million people months before the outbreak.
For them not to be a number, to have a conversation with relatives, with patients about their death, the death of somebody in their family, that is meaningful and that makes it as good as it can be. And that is hard when you're doing it multiple times a day.
Do you have all the equipment that you need?
Mainstream news articles tell that PPE gowns and masks are running out.
I think I personally today have the equipment I need, but I don't think we have all the equipment we need now.
And these are some of the challenges that you'll see that you'll have to address to address the disruptions that you're seeing to your healthcare system or to your organization.
And I think there is, among my colleagues here and in other hospitals, sort of sickening panic about what is to come.
And if you had a message for the Prime Minister, for the Health Secretary, from your experiences just in the last few hours, what would your plea to them be, Casey?
We're discovering all sorts of things, and I speak to colleagues and friends in Scotland and all over the place, and they have no idea because they're not seeing the volumes of patients, and I obviously know much more about how to look after and how these patients present than I did last week, and I just really hope we can communicate and share all of this effectively so that others are as well prepared as they can be.
All stakeholders realize pretty quickly just how underprepared we are and just how much is possible when we work together. And that the individual actions of any government or company won't add up to a proper global response. I think if we're honest with ourselves, collectively, the international community has never done enough to respond to global health security challenges. That we knew before COVID that the world was underprepared for biological risk.
The very observance of news repeated so often and commands suggested so often, such as protect the NHS, save lives, stay indoors, can become more than rhetoric. They can become adopted habits. You may even be an unwitting participant of a ritual or ceremony of sorts. The responses and actions that are allowed and that are chosen could be a conditioning process to form a habit which turns into a tradition and then a culture for a new way of life, maybe. In the public and social media perspective, it appears like people are fixated on the problem and the experiences of the problem of coronavirus, things like social restrictions and other things like that, especially those with children. But in the background, there is a greater narrative of environmental sustenance, sustainable development and population growth and control that many may not know about. If this virus has been manufactured in a lab to suit the sinister agenda of a motley few, then why? Another popular member of the royal family has influence here on these matters. With his authority as a crown member of the royal family, the Duke of Cambridge has warned that overpopulation could have catastrophic effects for the planet unless steps are taken to reduce pressure on wildlife and habitats.
Remains crucial if we are to succeed in protecting the world's iconic and endangered species. But for the tide to really turn on the trade, we require consistent global political leadership and action. Recent announcements that weaken commitments on rhino horn and tiger parts are deeply concerning. We must fiercely protect the fragile gains we have made. These gains are even more important in the face of last week's Living Planet report. This was a stark reminder that in just 40 years, we have destroyed 60% of the world's mammals, fish, birds, and reptile species. Our own survival is reliant on our ability to reverse the terrifying decline in the world's biodiversity. Modern human society, as we know it, depends on natural resources to survive and thrive. As the report says, nature is not just a nice to have. 2 years ago at this event, Sir David Attenborough warned that man is losing his own connection with nature. The IPCC's recent report was the loudest warning bell yet from the scientific community that we must act now. The clock is ticking towards a tipping point when the impact of what we are doing will become dangerously irreversible. Whether we are living in an urban or rural environment, nature matters to us all. We have a responsibility and an obligation to the next generation to drastically reduce the extent to which we plunder the planet's natural resources. I'm convinced that we have it in our power to reverse this trend. As the late Paul Allen, a great conservation philanthropist, said, as long as we work together with urgency and determination, there is no limit to what we can achieve.
And since we're in the habit of investigating, are there any other agendas we should know about?
In my lifetime, we have seen global wildlife populations decline by over half. Africa's rapidly growing human population is predicted to more than double by 2050, a staggering increase of 3.5 million people per month. There is no question that this increase puts wildlife and habitats under enormous pressure. We're going to have to work much harder and think much deeper if we are to ensure that human beings and the other species of animal with which we share this planet can continue to coexist. When we look back, we have a mixed track record in this regard, but I'm always optimistic when I observe how young people in particular, all over the world, are motivated to reverse the trends of the past.
Socially and around the world, we are all suffering the problems caused by a hidden enemy. Or are they in plain sight?
No, then we'll be giving you in touch, of course, with the progress of that throughout the programme. Also in focus.
Once upon a time, David Icke was the very model of a BBC sports presenter. Hello, David.
According to his book, The Truth Vibrations, the world as we know it is about to end. David Icke.
David Icke has often been criticised for his extreme theories about reptilian orders in government and high places such as the royal family.
It was shocking, it was heresy, it was just the most preposterous action you could imagine.
Let me get the story right. The press claim that you claim to be the Son of God.
I guess in a way it was kind of ludicrous that, you know, if the Son of God was going to come back again, then it would be this sports presenter who once played in goal for Coventry City.
All the royals were lizards. The Queen's hat was a sign of her being evil.
And for some reason, drinking human blood, particularly the blood of blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, seems to be very beneficial to holding mammal codes open.
What does that matter? 1 minute talking about he thinks he's God, he thinks he's the he's not God. Oh right, I didn't quite make it, I'm the Son of God. And now the royal family are living.
Wasn't it just magnificent? Delighted that there's so much laughter in the audience tonight.
But no,
but just let me say this.
They're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
But could there be something to his theories regarding global domination and the problem, reaction, solution programs that he has often mentioned?
With problem, reaction, solution, you create the problem, you tell the public the version of the problem that you want them to believe. and you want their reaction. My goodness me, and understandably so. 9/11 is a perfect example. You want fear, you want outrage, you want a reaction of something must be done, this can't go on, what are they going to do about it? And then those who have covertly created the problem and blame someone else, got that reaction, do something, then openly offer the solutions to the problems they have themselves created, which are changes in society, which advance their agenda. And because of 9/11, that's why I call it the trigger. 9/11 was the trigger of a sequence of events still unfolding, which has led to mass murder mayhem in the Middle East, as country after country was picked off, all pre-9/11 listed, by the way, by the people that really did it, and has led to a ever-gathering destruction of basic civil liberties, basic privacy, and the justification of surveillance, mass surveillance on the public.
Now, let's revise our collective problem. The coronavirus has ignited a global crisis affecting all nations and kingdoms, with loss of life increasing by the thousands daily. Even indigenous populations have experienced coronavirus deaths. The reaction of the public about cities consists of fear, panic, and fight or flight responses, which are evident in mass panic buying of household goods and food to deal with the extended periods of insisted house isolation as imposed by government authorities. All business, market and consumer activity has been restricted or suspended. Only essential services such as healthcare, policing and food services remain accessible, and there are access and capacity issues there, with our main health services in the UK becoming pushed over the limit as deaths increase, seemingly due to the coronavirus.
If the NHS gets overwhelmed with very ill COVID-19 patients, what should healthcare workers do? Who gets a bed? Who should have a ventilator? Who gets priority? For the UK's 240,000 doctors, it will be down to them to decide death decisions. But in a pandemic, if the system is under intense pressure, what should they do then? Their professional association has come up with these guidelines to help in some of the most challenging decisions they'll have to make.
Certainly a good idea to have this moment out and have time to digest it, so that there's time to have a public conversation. It's very important that we are aware of and are involved in these kinds of discussions and decisions as far as possible.
Special Advisor on Ethics and Human Rights to the British Medical Association. People will wonder what this means in real terms. Does it mean that if you have a potentially life-limiting condition, whether it's heart disease or something else, doctors would be correct to put you further down the list of priorities for treatment when it comes down to it?
I think it's absolutely essential that we recognise that nobody wants to be making these kinds of decisions. But if we do get to a situation where resources are absolutely overwhelmed by need, the question arises is, what does fairness in the distribution of those life-saving interventions look like?
Food is less produced, and either to capitalise or to stimulate balanced buying opportunities, prices increase, and this trend of demand exceeding supply sustains. The financial assistance of money is tested to its maximum. We are experiencing the same negative trends of supply and demand with our healthcare and education sectors also. The world already knew famine, poverty, inequality and disease, with even the leading economies such as the UK, Italy or America destabilised with the coronavirus effect now. How much money is needed to prevent death by corona disease, and why is the idea of mandatory vaccination for every person in the world being touted as the leading solution by major authorities, governments and scientist influencers of all nations? There are many intriguing questions here that have answers. A popular Bible verse reads, "For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10.
Will you be taking a pay cut as you urge footballers to do and as the government in New Zealand is doing? Yes or no?
Well, I'm not proposing to do that. What I am proposing to do is work every hour that there is.
So we'd expect you to do that with respect, Mr. Hancock, but you were, as I say, you were very censorious of footballers for reasons I didn't really understand, given they're just one group of well-paid people in the country.
So
you're a well-paid person, some of your cabinet are multi-millionaires. It might be quite nice if you follow the lead of the New Zealand government and take a pay cut. That's what I'm suggesting. You say you won't do that.
I think that everybody needs to play their part in this national effort, and that means Premier League footballers too. Given the sacrifices that many people are making, including some of my colleagues in the NHS who've made the ultimate sacrifice of going into work and have caught the disease and have sadly died, I think the first thing that Premier League footballers can do is make a contribution, take a pay cut and play their part.
Vaccine development is underway. This is a global health emergency. It's probably the greatest global health emergency we've had in a century. And I think what you're seeing is the greatest scientific response to that we have probably known. So the virus was identified very early on in the epidemic in China. It was sequenced, its genetic code was made available very quickly, and that's allowed academics and companies around the world to very quickly start to develop vaccines.
For the world at large, normalcy only returns when we largely vaccinated the entire global population. Vaccinated the entire global population.
Have you done any preparation in your own lives?
We had done some preparation, yes.
And what does that mean in terms of, because obviously we had issues in the UK here with people, panic shopping and doing that sort of thing. But how does a couple like you who've got this insight, how do you begin to get prepared for that?
Well, a number of years ago, we had talked about, what if there wasn't clean water? What if there wasn't enough food? Where might we go? What might we do as a family? So I think we should leave those preparations to ourselves. But absolutely, we had prepared and had, some food in the basement in case needed. And, and now we're all in the same situation, though, right? I mean, there are no tools. There was nothing we could do specifically to prepare ourselves with a particular drug or vaccine.
Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates has continued the fight against coronavirus, investing billions of dollars on the construction of factories working to develop a COVID-19 vaccine. The American business magnate has revealed the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation will select and fund 7 vaccine candidates. He says it could take at least 18 months to develop a safe and effective vaccine. In March, Gates stepped down from the Microsoft board to focus on health-related work, including the identification and development of COVID-19 treatments.
This is a disease we're all in together, and what we mostly talk about now in our home every night is how lucky we are. We understand our privilege, and when we say our grace at night, what we're thankful for around the table is that we aren't struggling to put a meal on the table as so many families around the world are. The entire global population.
Thinking about the new norm, do you think that's something we will see as part of our day-to-day lives here in the UK, in America?
I think it's very likely. I mean, we're seeing it certainly in China and South Korea. People are wearing masks in public. And so, if that's the worst thing we have to do, I think that's something that we just adopt as a community.
With all these global agendas emerging, one wouldn't be blamed for a sense of conspiracy theory about them. And if you're getting lost in translation and understanding it all, have you ever heard the expression, follow the money? It's a catchphrase popularized by the 1976 film all the president's men, which suggests political corruption can be brought to light by examining money transfers between parties.
Oh, but it's touching. Forget the myths that the media's created about the White House. The truth is, these are not very bright guys, and things got out of hand.
Hunt's come in from the cold. Supposedly he's got a lawyer with $25,000 in a brown paper bag.
Follow the money.
What do you mean? Where?
Oh, I can't tell you that.
But you could tell me
No, I have to do this my way. You tell me what you know, and I'll confirm. I'll keep you in the right direction if I can, but that's all. Just follow the money.
So let's revise some key influences that we've come across so far. We have the Bank of England, who prints the money for the UK. The Queen of England, and potentially the values or philosophies of maritime law, as celebrated on the Parliament £20 note, now distributed in the UK, also represented by J.M.W. Turner. Prince William, who spoke at Tusk Trust's charity gala about environmental urgency and human population management, and other humanitarian concerns. Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, who held Pandemic Exercise Event 201, also with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the World Economic Forum. As well as special advisor scientists, the World Health Organization, and with the cooperation of tech developers, these and some other agencies and organizations are of the few key influences emerging on the world stage. Such influences have been key driving forces that amplify or encourage a need for action or urgency with a variety of major environmental or social concerns in the global community, such as poverty, civil rights and liberties, health, and natural resources management. Meanwhile, technologies develop about us at an exponential rate, and it looks like the world could do with a little help. We can speculate that from out of our problems with COVID-19 will become our new identities by 2021. In the UK, there are already fines and custodial sentences for dissent from government-recommended protocol, such as social distancing or refusal of vaccines or ID tags in development.
In this case, could be used.
Will those who have the vaccine and identification upgrades soon coming be allowed to regain access to society, to be able to buy and sell and economically develop again? Furthermore, will those who refuse the brave new world orders that are to be considered, will they be considered divergent, and what shall come of them? The coronavirus pandemic has the concern of all nations and all people on Earth. We are told by scientists that none are immune and we need a cure. We are told by governments that we must comply with the New World Orders that we are all experiencing. I like to ask, why have democracies become so totalitarian in their attitude all of a sudden? Oh, the coronavirus. How could I forget? Thanks for watching. See you soon.